is like this morning. I'm just going to have a stream of deliveries, people wanting their computers formatting, people asking me for various herbs and spices, Alice Richardson complaining about my bundle. So we might as well just go with the chaotic flow.
Episode 3, discussing routines, our quarantine routines, and how we've been working from home. Full house again. Alice, Shada, Toby, Charles, and me kicking off with a quick question of how our productivity levels have been. Toby, how have you found productivity?
It's all right if I'm attending a meeting on a remote platform, which is what I seem to spend most of my day doing nowadays. I think it's all right, but it's very easy to be distracted by the fact that you're at home and you start thinking about, is it time to go for a walk to take my exercise? Should I go and do something else? And then it's easy to get headed off, I think. A lot of other potential things you could be doing.
Yeah, I've found as well, work gets done when it needs to, but probably I have a slower start to the day than I normally do. I think it takes me a while to get into the zone, and especially with less hearing. That if the first hearing isn't till 11, I struggle
till 10
after the day. Yeah.
Something you mentioned, Toby, is having a schedule, and I've found we seem to be increasingly diarising everything. We've got on Chambers Lex system. We've got Microsoft Outlook with meetings in. I've got a diary on my smartwatch telling me to drink water every day. Do we feel comfortable with that level of digital management? Charles?
Well, I'm sort of reluctantly signing up to it now. I've got this sort of greengrocer's chalk pen, and I write on a pane of glass in this internal door every morning the vague structure for the day, because otherwise I completely lose control, because it's not just Chambers legal work. There's, for me, because and I'm sure it's everybody's got their own particular changes, but for me, because I'm alone in my home, there's a lot of other boring practical things I've got to find time for, and I've got to stop, because otherwise I can just get a bit manic. So I try and get a structure every day with some vague idea. That being said, it's all gone. It regularly goes out of the window. It's been completely out of the window this morning. I spent most of this morning chopping herbs. Because it's very distracting having a kitchen in your office.
I bought a whiteboard, and I can't show you it because it's got confidential stuff on, but one side says do it now, and the other side says do it later. And I put the things that are fairly urgent on the do it now side, and then I put other little notes and things. I need that reminder of when things are due, and to just manage everything that's going on.
We had our webinar from Neil Perkin, who said, eat the frog, do the worst thing first, which I suppose is like your list, Alice, of do it now and do it later. Has anybody been trying to follow that, the instruction from our consultant?
Yes, I ate the frog on Sunday. I won't tell you what the frog was, but I didn't want to do it, and I did, and I felt a lot better. And he had something else called Moscow, an acronym that I'm now can't remember exactly what it is. I think must do, could do, should do, and would like to do, as a sort of way of prioritizing things. I mean, at the minute, Alice and I are litigating against each other, and that's come and sort of, put a big torpedo in the way of things. It's actually taken quite a bit of willpower to not work on the case 24/7, because I need to get other stuff out of the way to free up time to do it. It's very challenging. I'm finding it more challenging than before the lockdown. But that's not to say that life was straightforward as a litigator before then. There had to be prioritization, and actually, I think what this does is it forces you to think about balance and forces you to think about work-life balance, because work isn't a place I can drive away from and forget.
The elusive balance. I don't think any of us had that before the lockdown.
Yeah.
Something that's been a struggle is the frenzy of notifications we seem to get. I mean, Toby, you're head of chambers as well as having your own practice. How have you been managing that balance?
Badly. It just seems to be incessant, and I keep clicking things saying I'm accepting them, or I don't think I've ever rejected any, accepting or closing, and then they come back again, and then it's when you've got something counting down at the top of your screen telling you that you're 14 minutes from a meeting or 12 minutes from a meeting. It seems as if it's impossible to escape. But at least when you're now in a different life and a different way of life from what was before, it means that you can keep some sort of a handle on where you're meant to be. I mean, I used to just look at a Lex diary and see that I was meant to be at that court tomorrow at that time. Well, that no longer figures in my practice at the moment, and instead it's all meetings, and remembering to make calls to other people involved in the management of chambers.
It's generated a whole new layer of accessibility to one another, hasn't it? Having Microsoft Teams for the entirety of chambers, and a whole new diary feature alongside Lex, and there's no integration that I know of at the minute between the two. Alice, how have you found staying up to date with all the court guidance and the updates and the law and the regulations that have been fired out over the last few weeks?
I found that really overwhelming the first couple of weeks because it was just non-stop and it was everywhere. I tend to find that the best source of information for me is actually Twitter. I use Twitter quite a lot for work, and that seems to be where the most up-to-date stuff in my practice, at least, where I find it from other practitioners or whoever it may be. But yeah, it's overwhelming when it's coming at you from all angles. But that, again, that's also about prioritising, because there's things that you look at, you're like, well, that doesn't apply to me. I don't need to read it. I don't need to care right now. Or file that, save it later, especially if you're practising across different jurisdictions or different courts. I suppose that's more difficult in different areas where, local judges and local courts have got their own guidance. That is quite difficult.
Certainly, for my part, there is no real catalogue of all the information that's come out. It's just been a stream of guidance and policies. Like on Twitter, it's just one after the next. Which one has been supplanted? Which one has been modified and changed? I think the family law guidance has changed 2 or 3 times now with a very similar document. I've been checking Westlaw every morning, check the most recent updates, and then we've all been doing webinars, I think.
And I'm quite enjoying the video work that people are doing in chambers and elsewhere, and I'm probably going to, dip a toe into that water. But it has been, for me personally, just the busiest 4 or 5 weeks of my career, and it's a kind of, applying the remote working that we had at the minute. This webinar is all I've got time for, but there'll be more. And yeah, I think individual practitioners' websites just become more important because it's basically your presence in the world. People aren't going to see you in the local market when you're wandering up and down Grey Street. They're not going to see you at licensing seminars, in my case, whether they're locally or nationally. And I think it's I think it's just a useful point of contact for clients to have somewhere where you can put all your stuff.
What do we say are the top tips from working during this lockdown? What's the best tip you could offer someone to improve efficiency in their practice?
The best tip that I've invented myself is I've taken all work apps, email accounts, everything off my mobile telephone, because it suddenly occurred to me I never leave the house. So why do I need to have everything on a mobile telephone? If I'm working, I can sit at this desk. But if I'm not working, if I'm chopping herbs or whatever, I don't need pings on my mobile phone that I'm Googling, does spring onions freeze well? Pings from Alice Richardson moaning about my bundle. So I have it all in one place. So my top tip is that if you're immobile, as we all now are, have the office in the office, but leave it out of the other rooms of the house. I don't know if that's a more efficient, it probably is a more efficient working tip, because otherwise I'm reacting to Teams messages at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, which is not what I should be doing. If people desperately need to get in touch with me, they can call my mobile, that's fine, but I don't need to be checking emails, Teams, Twitter, LinkedIn, or anything else on the thing. It becomes a ball and chain, so I've released myself from that.
I was hoping your top tip was going to be to start writing on windows and walls.
Oh, well, yeah, no. Well, I've been doing that. I've been doing that for years. My top tip is to invest in a. I'll get the brand of the pen and we can flash on the screen. But it's a greengrocer's chalk pen. So I've always written myself little to-do notes on the internal wall. So no, that's not a COVID tip. That's just a tip for life. Get a greengrocer's chalk pen.
I mean, my tip, and I always do, is having to-do lists. I don't understand how anyone can practice without having written down somewhere all the things that they need to do and when they're done by. But I think probably from the webinar that we had, the thing to do is to have some kind of organisation to that, and otherwise it's just overwhelming if you've got a big list of things that are all given the same priority. But again, that's something I would advocate any time, not just now, but particularly now. I also downstairs, much to my husband's annoyance, have like a house to-do list with things like clean the cars, clean the garage, clean the bins. So
next, is it just his name?
No, I just leave it really passively aggressively, like in the areas where he is.
So what I always try and do is when I'm done with the work day, I have an exercise machine at home. So I either go on that or go home. And I find that helps my brain know, okay, turn off the law brain and try and relax.
Mm.
And especially going out walking as well.
And Toby?
It's the list making. A long time ago, somebody produced for chambers some pads that were going to be used as notepads in conference rooms, and they made them the wrong size. And Simon Stewart had a stash of them. I've got one of them here. I've got two left, and there's nothing worse than spending 20 minutes in a meeting on a remote channel and then realizing you've forgotten to mention three things, because you can't then get back on. Because what people have realized with Teams, you've got this notification of whether you're busy, do not disturb, away, and all that sort of thing. And none of them bear any relation to what anybody's actually doing. The only one that I believe is our Chambers director, because he faithfully applies the right code. But nobody else, and even when I've tried to reassign mine, it changes. But you've just got to make lists of things, and it's not. I don't have the bravery to leave lists for domestic chores to be performed by other members of my household. They write them for me, I have to say. But one thing is quite important. You can spend all of the day doing the work-related stuff, and then come sort of early evening, you think, oh my goodness, I forgot that the car insurance was meant to have been renewed or something like that. So you've got to make sure you keep on top of everything.
Last thing, compare cups. A trend started by Alice in the first episode.
Oh, mine's just an A for Alice. It's nothing exciting.
I don't know what mine is. I found this in the back of the cup.
That looks like some sort of Satanist organisation.
Yeah. You better check that out before this goes out.
Mine I had to bring back because it shows an insight into my personality, but it hasn't been seen on a webinar before.
It matches your shirt as well.
Oh, well, I'm coordinated in every regard.
Very boringly, I've just got the same one I always have, which is my little espresso cup.
Having a routine, it's important. Same cup every day.
And I've got my big pink cup.
Enough caffeine to fuel all of us in that one. All right. Thanks very much, everyone.
Okay, thanks. Bye.